gentle marketers. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 43 of the Gentle Business Revolution podcast, the show where we talk about marketing your business by disrupting the current marketing paradigm and changing it to a gentler approach, one that's based on empathy and kindness. I'm back. I'm still Sarah Zinacroce, your host, and you know that you're in the right place if you are a heart-centered entrepreneur or change maker who is looking for a better way to market your business. Or you are an entrepreneur who's simply fed up with the traditional marketing model and are ready for a paradigm shift. You might also be a marketing impact pioneer, so someone who's working in marketing for an organization who does business for good and who's interested in marketing differently as well. Today's episode falls under the first P of the gentle marketing mandala. I called it passion, but it could have also been called purpose. And just real quick, if you're new to this show, a big warm welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. I want to let you know that I structured this podcast and the conversations around the 7 P's of the gentle marketing mandala. And the other P's are personal power, people, product, pricing, promotion, and partnership. So seeing this one-page gentle marketing mandala with the 7 email prompts might help you understand a bit better what we're talking about here. You can get your one-page marketing plan at sarahzinacroce.com/1, that's the number 1 page. So I've known today's guest for many years. Gary Smith is the author of 4 books, including 2 in the personal development area and 1 focusing on customer service. As a business leader for more than 4 decades, following his work as an engineer, he has a wealth of experience to draw on his work with his coaching clients as well as his readers and those who attend his live keynote presentations. Gary is a certified John Maxwell coach and a certified DISC consultant. He lives with his family in Southington, Connecticut. So in today's episode, we talk about the importance of purpose for the work we do, how to find our purpose, that achievement has actually little to do with money. We talk also about the law of intentionality and the law of awareness, and steps to achieve our goals once we have found our purpose. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation, which is really a true dance between the being and the doing. Without further ado, here's Gary Smith and I. Hi, Gary. So good to speak to you. How are you today?
I'm really well, Sarah. So good to see you again and get a chance to talk with you. It's been a while.
I know we've been communicating back and forth over email because, well, I'll tell listeners why in a second, but we've known each other for a long time. And I feel like we both kind of grew into different people than maybe when we first started communicating. And it's interesting when I saw you, when you mentioned the book title that we're going to talk about today, so PurposeDriven Achievement, I was just like so happy for you and with you that you picked up this title that is, as you know, very close to my purpose and my heart and what I wanted to do. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in and kind of see what kind of people we have become. Both of us have changed over the years. So
but it's amazing, isn't it? When you take the time, if you pause and you look back,
right,
and you see how much you've changed over the years. I think what happens is it's almost like I liken it to like one of my granddaughters. If I see them every day, I don't notice that they're growing. But if there's, like now with the pandemic, there's 2 of our granddaughters that we haven't seen in like 3 months. And I look at them now and it's like, oh my goodness, you're so big. You've changed so much. And I think that that's what happens to us, is that we get so forward focused that a lot of times we don't stop to pause and look back and say, wow, I really have moved forward in life. Wow, I really have made some positive changes.
You're so right. And kids, my boys, they're 14 and 16. turning 17, and they're kind of annoyed when people tell them, oh, you've grown, they're like, oh, that's what old people always say. But it's true that we don't tell each other that anymore as adults. And obviously it's not the size, but we could say, and I guess I just did, it's like, look at us, we have grown in the last 3 years. So yeah, it's nice to also, like you say, celebrate and look back, and not always say, what's my next thing? It's like, oh, looking back, look at me becoming
exactly.
this different person.
Yeah.
My listeners have probably also heard me say before that entrepreneurship is like a dance between the being and the doing. And to me, that's really what your book is about. I find that the first part is all about the being, finding your purpose. And then the second part is all about the doing and the very kind of pragmatic steps to get to your goals. That's where the achievement part comes in, right? I want to have you tell us, kind of the story of the book. What got you to having this idea of, because you've written other books before, and maybe you can quickly, mention what you've written about before. And so why this interest in the purpose?
Okay, well, very quickly, this is PurposeDriven Achievement is my fourth book. I've written 3 books prior to that. My first book was called The Shepherd and the Princess, and it was a really sort of a behind the curtains look at the life of King David in the Bible, and his what led up to his confrontation with Goliath. And so that was actually birthed out of a talk that I used to give 25 years ago. And I finally got to a point of saying, no, I really need to put this down on paper and share it with people. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote a book called Achieving Unusual Greatness. And that is basically a collection of blog posts that I wrote over a period of about 5 years. And it's divided into 2 sections, one for personal development, one for business development. And then the third book is called The Customer Conundrum. It's a book on how to create a customer-centric organization and what good customer service really looks like. But when we talk about purpose-driven achievement and why that became so important to me is, as a business consultant and business coach over the years, one of the things that I have always asked myself is, when people aren't moving their lives or their businesses forward the way they really want to, what's going on? Is there one sort of common theme that sort of ties everything together to say, if you're not achieving, why are you not achieving? And the thing that I have found is that common thread in almost all cases is either lack of purpose overall or lack of clarity on what your purpose is. And I think that's because so much of the time we tend to be so focused on what's going on today that we're not taking the longer view, and we're not asking ourselves questions like, well, what's the end game? What is it that, God didn't put me on this earth to occupy space and suck up oxygen. What is it ultimately that I want to achieve with my life? And so we never get to the point of really defining the purpose. And that's what keeps us from really leading the happy, fulfilled lives we want to live.
Mm-hmm. I find that this pandemic has really kind of been like a blessing in a way for so many people, maybe exactly those people that you're describing, and that included me not so long ago, who just don't have the time or don't take the time to think about, well, what do I really want to do? Because sometimes purpose, I also find, is kind of this big word that almost scares you if you don't know it yet. And so another way of looking at it is just like, what do I really want to do? What is my, like Simon Sinek says, what's my why? And this pandemic has almost given us this break, maybe that is necessary because everything has been put on hold. And so we joked before we kind of started recording that we both took this break to write on our books. And And I feel that other people probably also kind of had more time. There was less commuting and just less busyness, more busyness at home, but less busyness with work and traveling. And so maybe I'm hoping that has given a lot of people the chance to actually think about, what they really want with their life. Did you see examples where this applies?
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked to a number of people who are shifting gears. I mean, it's sort of like
Mm-hmm.
almost like a life change where they're home, they're getting a chance to spend more time with their family, with the kids and stuff like that. And I think that they have gotten so caught up in their careers that now that they're either working from home or in some cases have maybe been furloughed for a couple of months, so they're not working. They're realizing how much they're missing and how much more there is to life than just getting up and going to work every day. And
Yeah.
so they're sitting back and they're starting to ask themselves those kinds of hard questions to say, well, okay, what is it that I really want in life? What is it that's really important to me? And as I have coached people over the years, one of the statements I've used frequently is, in the final analysis, it's not about money and things. It's about people and relationships.
Right.
And so I think people are beginning to discover that. The challenge for them, and where I'm hoping that this book and some of the coaching I do will really help, is to say, okay, if I'm not happy with what I'm doing, then where do I go? How do I go about looking at my current situation, and how do I go about making some of those changes? How do I find out what I'm really passionate about, and where is the intersection between my passion and my skills, and what are the gaps that exist there? What things do I need to learn? How do I need to change in order to be able to do something that's more meaningful with my life?
Right. Yeah. And I want to slow you down because I want you to really go into more depth about this, because I think that is the hardest part. And you did just say, those hard questions. And I truly believe that the busyness, the corporate life, all of that is kind of, I sometimes refer to it as this trance. We're in this trance, we're just doing, and never actually pausing to reflect, what do I really want and why am I here, and all these hard questions, because they do feel hard, because you're just kind of like lost. And so the doing is almost like, oh, what a release. I can just keep on doing and, go back and go back to work. And so now, having said that, take us into the hard work. So how do you help your people? And you described it in the book. What are the steps to help us find our purpose?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is we got to slow down.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, uh, Defining your purpose is not a task. It's not something where you get out a clean sheet of paper and you sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and 5 minutes later you're done and you have a purpose. Purpose is something that needs to be unpacked, and it needs to be approached, I think, carefully, prayerfully, because you're talking about the rest of your life here. Whether you're 20 years old just starting off, or whether you're like me, almost 68, and in the senior years of your life, whatever time you have left on this planet is to be used for the benefit of other people. And so we need to slow down, and we need to take some time to really thoughtfully think through what's going on. And one of the ways that I did this, and it's in the book, I was invited in 2006 to teach at the Kazakh American Free University in Ust-Kamenogorsk, Kazakhstan. And it's interesting because the university was created by a former minister of education in Kazakhstan after the fall of the Iron Curtain, and after the Russians pulled out of Kazakhstan. And you need to understand, the Russians are the ones who had developed and owned all of the technology that was being used in the country. And so when they pulled out, with the exception of the oil industry in Kazakhstan, the economy there largely collapsed. But this gentleman created the university because he wanted to train the next generation of business leaders in his country. but he wanted them to be trained based on the American free market, free enterprise capitalist system. And so he partnered with some companies in the United States, and through them invited some successful business people and entrepreneurs to be visiting professors there to teach some of the classes. And so I went in and I actually taught 2 classes while I was there. One was a class in strategic planning to undergraduates, and then I also did a graduate level class in corporate management. But the undergraduate class was interesting. Most of my students came from pretty humble backgrounds financially. And when they came into class, they thought, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to begin working on this strategic plan for a multinational, multi-billion-dollar company, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And the first assignment I gave them was to go home and create a purpose statement. And one young woman in the class, her name was Katya, looked at me and said, well, I don't understand. Why do you want us to do this? And I said, because if you cannot create a purpose statement for a corporation of one, then you have no credibility to do it for a multi-billion-dollar multinational company that's going to impact the lives of perhaps hundreds of thousands of people. And so the kids started working on their purpose statement, and they came back. And as I started to read some of this stuff, I realized that they were very short-focused. They were looking at it from the standpoint of, what I want in life. I want to make a lot of money. I want to have a fancy home. I want to have the sports cars. I want to travel the world. I want to have a yacht on the Mediterranean and all that sort of stuff. And so I paused and I said, guys, I think we need to dig a little bit deeper here. And so I painted a scenario for them. I said, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to begin to develop a mental picture of what you're going to look like when you're 90 years old. And really stop and think about it. What are you going to look like? Are you going to be standing up straight, or are you going to be hunched over? Are you going to be able to walk briskly and go out and take your morning walks, or are you just going to sort of shuffle around? Those sorts of things. Really begin to develop a picture of what you're going to look like. And if you have any problems with that, if you have, elderly parents or elderly grandparents, look at them, because they're a good example of where you're headed. And then once you get the mental picture, then start thinking about what is it that you're going to feel like at 90 years old? Are you going to be healthy? Are you going to be sick? Are you going to be able to see clearly, or are cataracts going to be obstructing your vision? Are you going to be able to hear clearly? Or are you going to struggle to stay up with conversations? Mentally, are you going to be sharp, or are you going to start failing a little bit, maybe a little bit of dementia creeping in? What's that going to be like? And how is that going to make you, how are you going to feel? Mm-hmm. And so once you get the physical picture and the sort of the mental picture of what's going on, and you begin to see and feel those emotions, then we're going to take the next step. And the next step is, you're critically ill. You haven't been out of bed in 3 months. And your doctor just left your side and told you that you had less than 24 hours to live. At that point in time, as you look back over your life, what will you have wanted your life to stand for? What are the things that you have accomplished in life that you are most proud of? What are the things that you accomplished in life that you're really not so proud of? What are the things that you wish you did that you didn't do? Do the people in your life really know how much you love them, how much you cared for them? Have you invested your life in the lives of others, or has it always been about you? And as people begin to answer those kinds of questions, they begin to get the threads, they begin to find the threads of who they really are as people and what in life is really important. And then they can begin to take those threads and start weaving them together into what will eventually become a tapestry of their lives. And when the kids started looking at it from that perspective, all of a sudden, there was a major mindset change. There was a shift from what's in it for me to realizing that there's a bigger picture in this world and that I have a unique opportunity to impact this world for the better. And then their mission statements, their purpose statements began to reflect that. And here's how I can contribute to society. Here's the skill sets that I want to develop, and here's how I want to employ them, to make the world a better place. And I think that that's when we start thinking long, I mean, Stephen Covey talks about begin with the end in mind. When we look long, then we begin to realize the tremendous impact that we can and should have with our lives.
Yeah. That's so beautiful that you saw this actually like really unfolding with this group of students, because I think it's so easy to fall into the in my book I write about the mainstream definition of success, and it looks like that's exactly what these kids were, that's the first thing that came to mind. The mainstream definition of success is usually money, big house, car, all these things that we think make us successful, right? And it's so beautiful that you got them to really think about that and say, look, is that really how you define your success? And then and do you see, is there purpose in that? Does that make you feel like you've lived a good life? It also reminds me of this Australian nurse, I think her name was Bonnie something, who did research. So she was basically accompanying people who were dying. And the most common response that she got from these people on the last day of their lives is that they said they wish they had been more authentic. So they wish they hadn't lived their lives according to someone else's expectations. And then there was also other answers that kind of reflected this definition of success. They were trying to achieve something that didn't actually make them happy. And it's very frequent that we are in this trance again, that we are on this trend that we think we need to achieve more in terms of what it means financially speaking, without actually going deeper and saying, yeah, but am I going to feel good when I die just because now I have $1 million or $2 million? And I think it's just beautiful that you got to actually got your students to think about that very deeply.
Well, it's interesting because I was very fortunate as a young man. When I was just in my 20s, I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman whose first name was also Gary. His name was Gary Reasons, and he was a very successful businessman. And I got to be friends with him, and he and I occasionally would have an opportunity to get together and have a cup of coffee and talk. And one of the times we were talking, he looked at me and he said, you're an ambitious guy, you're hardworking. I know that you're going to be successful. And he said, that's great. And he said, but I want you to think about something, because he said, just as you were talking about, Sarah, that most people define success as, having all of the trappings of success, making a lot of money, having the homes, yada, yada, yada. But he said, I want to put a scenario in front of you that I want you to think about, because he said, eventually you'll get to a point in life where money doesn't matter. And he said, I'm not saying that you're going to have enough money to go out and buy the entire world, but he said, by money doesn't matter, I mean, you'll never have to worry about your bills being paid or anything like that. Your financial worries will be over. And he said, when that happens, what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, my point in saying that is this: as you live your life, you have to have a purpose that's bigger than money.
Right.
And he said, discover what that purpose is, and it'll drive you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I see that happening so much with people who are kind of, in my age range, so middle life somewhere, where money, we have enough money. So money is not the same problem it used to be in our early 20s, where, we had to, struggle to make money. Now it's not such a struggle anymore. And yet, and that brings me to another topic of your book is these beliefs that we have, that money is always scarce, maybe, and you kind of are stuck with these old, they often refer to them as limiting beliefs, and you still act the same way and always wanting more money, even though you actually have enough and you should now be focusing on something bigger than money. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where, just like with purpose, I mean, purpose doesn't exist in and of itself. It's related to other things in our lives. it's related to our needs.
Right.
We have some basic needs. We have a need to make and spend money. We have a need for achievement. We have a need for relationship. Many of us have transcendent or spiritual needs. But those needs, along with our purpose, are being driven by exactly what you're talking about. They're being driven by what is it that we believe.
Right.
And many times the challenge with beliefs is that only about 20% of the beliefs that we have are beliefs that we have deliberately chosen and installed in ourselves. The other 80% exist because of life experiences that we have had. And so
Yeah.
we're completely unaware of them. But if there's not a congruence between, what we believe, our purpose, and our needs, then we're off kilter and we're not going to achieve things. One of the examples I often use is, if my purpose is to make a lot of money so that I can give a lot of money away, but I have a limiting belief that says money's the root of all evil and people are nothing but greedy money grubbers. What's the chance that I'm ever going to fulfill that? It's like two rams in my head who are just butting horns with each other, and so I'm going to live a very conflicted life, and it's going to hold me back. But until I take the time to unpack that stuff and understand what those beliefs are, and then make a decision that I'm going to believe something different, nothing's going to change.
Right. Yeah. It's so true, and yet it's so hard to actually realize that those beliefs are maybe no longer needed. Maybe those are beliefs that you created when the situation was completely different, and maybe those are even beliefs that you took over from your parents or even a previous generation, and to grow up and realize, oh, this belief, it no longer serves me. that takes a lot of awareness, right?
Well, not only that, but I think it highlights the needs. I'm going to put sort of a selfless plug in here. It highlights the need for a coach,
Yeah.
because we need somebody who can see those things in us that we can't see.
Right.
I often make the comment that even coaches need coaches, and I actually have three of them. And the reason that I have them, and it just happened the other day, I was talking with one of my coaches. She lives out in Illinois, and her name is Stephanie Callahan. And I was on the phone with her, and we were talking about some stuff. And we sort of get together every few months, and we kind of catch up with what's going on with the families and everything. But then we start talking about business. And sometimes I'll be talking with Stephanie, and all of a sudden she'll say, whoa, wait a minute, back up. You said this. What's the belief that's underlying that?
Right.
And it's like, I never thought about that. And it's like, well, yeah, that's why I'm here. I want to see those things, and I want to challenge you to say, okay, what's the underlying belief that's driving this behavior or driving this thought process? Is it real? Well, no, it's not real. Well, fine, then let's change that.
Right.
And so we need people sometimes to help us become aware of those things, and a good coach will pull that stuff out of you just by listening to what you're saying and asking some clarifying questions. And so that's why I firmly believe that everybody on the planet should have a coach, someone who they can relate to, someone who they can really open up to and be honest with, and be transparent with, so that the individual can help them.
Yeah, and there's this quote that I'm thinking of, goes something along the lines, you can't read the label of the jar that you're sitting in. So you're sitting in your own little head in your jar, right? Well, you can't read the label, and the labels is the ones that only the outside view can help you read and understand. And so that's what a coach, a mentor, is helping you do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gary, in the book, you often refer to the law of intentionality and the law of awareness. Can you explain those two to our listeners, and how they kind of are relevant with the purpose in general?
Yeah, when we look at purpose, Purpose is sort of the overarching thing in our life when it's well defined. It's what ultimately we want our life to be about, what ultimately we want to achieve. And then we have to begin to shift gears and say, okay, now I'm going to move out of this sort of creative space of the being part of things, and I'm going to begin transitioning toward the doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we need to do is within that, we need to start looking at where are the gaps? Where are the gaps in what I need to become? Where are the shortfalls that I need to close in order to be able to move closer to my purpose? And so the law of intentionality says that first of all, we have to accept responsibility for ourselves, that our development personally and professionally is our responsibility. It's me. It's my job to take care of myself and to develop myself. It's not my wife. It's not my kids. It's not my boss at work. It's not, my professors in school. It's completely up to me. So first of all, the law of intentionality says, take responsibility for yourself.
Right.
And then the next part of the law of intentionality says that my personal development has to be intentional. I can't just be saying, well, I'm going to go out and, my mom says I need to go back to school, so I'm going to go take a course in underwater basket weaving. No, it needs to relate to what your purpose is and to those identified gaps that says, here's a skill that I need to develop. And maybe, some of them are going to be hard skills of actual physical skills that you need to learn how to do. And some of them are going to be soft skills, like, do I communicate properly? Am I a good listener? Those sorts of things. But there are skills that we need to develop, but we need to know what they are. We need to accept responsibility for them, and we need to be intentional. And then the law of awareness that goes hand in hand with that simply says you have to know yourself in order to grow yourself. You have to get gut level honest with yourself and understand, what do I know and what don't I know,
Mm-hmm.
before I can be intentional about changing anything in my life or adding more things to my life. And so the three things sort of all blend together, and they feed off each other, because you have a purpose that you want to achieve. You need to be aware of what you know and what you don't know, and then you have to be intentional and take responsibility for adding things to your life that are going to increase your knowledge and increase your abilities.
Yeah, that's great. I can kind of give an example here, because so my mission or purpose is to bring back more empathy and kindness to the business world. So that's kind of the big purpose statement, if you will. And one of the things that I am now intentional about is getting that message out there about gentle marketing. And so, that's all nice to have a message, but now it's back to the doing. Well, what do I need to do? Well, right now I'm writing a book. So I need to actually write the book, not just say I'm going to write a book, right? That's one thing. So I'm writing the book. Another thing is speaking. So I'm preparing a TED Talk. That is a big deal for me, because that's not one of my favorite things, to speak on stage. And so that means I need to work on those skills, because I'm an introvert, and speaking just is not one of those things that comes naturally, especially on a big stage. So the awareness is there. Okay, that's a skill that I need to improve. The intention is there. And so this Friday I'm going to a speaking training where you have to actually practice and yeah, really stand on stage and get feedback and all of that. So that is the law of intention and law of awareness. Is that right?
Exactly. You nailed it.
Good. So once we found our purpose and maybe found our way back to our purpose, if we already had it, what are some of those key concepts then to go from the being to the doing? So we said, okay, intention, awareness. You have some other steps that you talk about in your book.
Yeah, I think once we've defined our purpose, then we have to begin looking again, sort of, let's still focus on the bigger picture of looking at it and saying, okay, what are the sort of major goals that I would want to accomplish that would make me feel that I have either achieved or am moving much closer to the attainment of my purpose. And then I take people through a process of what I call progressive granularity. And that is, once you have a goal out there, and that goal might be anywhere from 6 months to 5 years in the future, start breaking it down into finer and finer pieces until you can answer one question. What do I have to do today, right now, in order to reach a goal that may be 5 years in the future? And until we get to that point, until we've boiled it down and gotten that granular with it, we don't have anything to do. We don't have anything to take action on. And so much of the time with people, I find what happens is that they're really good in the being part. They'll come up with a purpose statement and they'll, create 3 to 6 major goals that they want to work on, and then they get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk to them about it, it's like, well, it just sort of got overwhelming. And I said, well, wait a minute. Let's think about going to college. Let's say that you decided that you wanted to go to college and you want to get a 4-year degree from a university. You're going to sign up for college, and once you're accepted, you're not going to just sit back for 4 years and do nothing, and then at the end of 4 years show up and expect to get a diploma, right? You're going to take a first class, and after you've completed that class, you're going to take a second class. And so it's looking at things from the standpoint that it's not about the quantum leaps in life that we make. It's about the little baby steps that we take. And so, the thing, if I look at a goal 5 years in the future and I boil it down, the action item I may take today or may need to take today is nothing more than send an email, make a phone call. And if I do that, if I do those little things and I do them consistently, number one, it builds confidence in me because I realize that it's just doing little things every day and staying focused on that goal and making sure that I'm doing things consistently. And if I do that after 3 months or 6 months, and I take the time, like you and I were talking about earlier, if I take the time to turn around and look back, I'll find out just how much things have changed
Mm-hmm.
in that 3 or 6 months. And that builds momentum. And once you get that ball rolling, trust me, it doesn't want to stop. But it starts with getting very, very finely detailed about what is it that I need to do next? What do I need to do today? What do I need to do tomorrow? And it's the same type of thing. Like when I was writing my book, and I'm sure that you did the same thing as you've been working through your book, is I laid out a plan and said, okay, I'm going to write chapter 1 on this day, and chapter 2 on this day, and chapter 3 on this day. And then just following through and making sure that stuff gets done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting what you said. It's often the overwhelm because, and in the book you write about mountains, right? The goal seems like such a big mountain that people are standing at the bottom. And I admit, for me as well, when I said I'm going to write a book, I'm like, oh gosh, I have no idea how am I going to do this. And so first thing I did is I hired a coach. I'm like, well, I need help here. And the minute you break it up into little pieces, it becomes easier because it's no longer this big mountain, but it's just, small hills that you can climb every day. And then, yeah, you turn around and all of a sudden you are standing on the big mountain. You're like, how did I get here? Well, I guess just one bit every day. It's, yeah.
It's one step at a time.
One step at a time. And I think that's exactly where it's good to have someone besides you, so that you don't make it harder for yourself. Because I feel that in my early years of business, I made everything, I didn't hire a coach, and everything was much harder. I think I would have gotten to where I wanted to be much faster had I worked with someone. And B, does someone really can also help you with accountability and say, did you do this? Did you get there? Do you need help getting there?
Well, that's another critical point, Sarah, and that is that So much of the time, we set goals for ourselves, and even when we break them down into the tasks that we need to do, there is no accountability. I mean, if I have a task and it doesn't get done today, all right, who's going to slap me on the wrist? Nobody else knows that that task was supposed to be done except me. But
Right.
if I have an accountability partner that I'm on the phone with every week or every couple of weeks, and I tell that individual, this is what I'm going to accomplish, then I know that in 2 weeks when that phone call comes up, I have to answer for what I did and what I didn't do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I want to come back and kind of end with purpose, because that's the topic of today's episode. And as I said, your book is basically two parts. The first part is the being, and the second part is then the doing. So achieving in your goals, and therefore getting to your purpose. But I'd love for you to end with the story about your daughter, and that you share about in the book, because I think it's a beautiful kind of testimonial to knowing your purpose and knowing what you really want to do in life.
Okay. Yeah, my oldest daughter Alexandra is a doctor. She is a neonatologist, which is a fancy word for she takes care of babies that are born extremely early, typically 24 to 28 weeks gestation. And she knew from the time she was 6 or 7 years old that she wanted to be a doctor. Now, how that happened, I have no idea. Uh, but she decided that that was what she wanted, and she worked hard all through high school, graduated at the top of her class in high school, and then went on to college. And in college, she majored in a combination of biology and pre-medicine. Did well in college, got into a good medical school, and then in the medical school process, the first couple of years are really training in two basic things. It's physiology and pharmacology. It's teaching you about the human anatomy, how the human body works, and then pharmacology talks about when you have a particular illness and you take a medication for that illness, exactly what's going on with your body. How is that medication helping you? But then when they get into their third year, they start going through rotations through the various areas of the hospital. And the whole idea behind them is to give them a general exposure to all of the various areas and to help them decide what they want to specialize in.
Mhm.
And so Alexandra was about halfway through her third year of medical school, and she had been considering several different specialties. But one night she came home from school and she was sitting with us having dinner, and she announced that she was going into pediatrics. And we've always encouraged our kids to, hey, you follow your passions, you do what you want to do. But I asked her, I said, well, you realize, first of all, that pediatrics is a hard field because a lot of times you're dealing with babies. And when you're dealing with babies and they're sick, they can't tell you what's going on. They can't say, hey, it hurts over here. The diagnostic skills required are pretty strong. And
Mhm.
she said, yeah, I know, and I'm willing to do that. And I said, okay. And I said, the other thing you have to realize too is that while all doctors make decent money, pediatricians are sort of on the low end of the pay scale. And she got all teary eyed on me and she looked at me and she said, oh, Dad, it's not about the money. This
Mm,
is what God has called me to do.
mm,
And I said, okay, if that's what he's called you to do, then you do it. And she went on, she finished medical school. She moved to New York City to Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital and did her residency there. And again, as part of residency, they take you and they give you exposure to all of the subspecialties. So she was in the intensive care unit, she was in the neonatal intensive care unit, all over the place, surgery, you name it. And one night she was working in the neonatal intensive care unit, caring for a little baby that was, 24 weeks, weighed less than a pound.
mm,
And she said, I was by a little isolette, and the doctor, who was the attending physician of the NICU, came over and put his arm around her and whispered in her ear, this is what God has called you to do. This is the specialty you need. And so she went on and completed her residency, did a fellowship in neonatology, and then she moved to from New York to Boston, and she's now at Tufts Medical Center in Boston. But one of the times when I was talking to her, I said, so, what's going on with, with your patients and stuff like that? And she looked at me and she said, Dad, they're not my patients. They're my babies. And I love each and every one of them. And she said, if it ever gets to a point where they're just another patient that needs to be cared for, it's time for me to quit, because I will have lost my edge, because I will no longer have the passion to give them 1,000% of the care that they deserve.
Right.
And in the book, I asked people, I said, if you were in a situation where you had a little one that was born like that, who was fighting for his or her life, what kind of doctor do you want taking care of your little one? Do you want someone who's just there for the money? Or do you want someone who's there because he or she believes that's her calling, that's their purpose in life?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And at the same time, I think not everybody has this privilege to know, like your daughter did from age 6 or 7, what their purpose is. And that's why I think this book is so helpful, and this conversation is hopefully helpful, because it's never too late. You can always, change direction, kind of like what I did. I was doing the LinkedIn work, and yes, I enjoyed it mostly, but it wasn't my purpose. And so I think, as beautiful as this example is, it also kind of gives us permission to say it's not too late. We can still go back and think about what we're really wanting to do, especially if maybe what we're doing right now isn't giving us that joy in the morning when we get up.
Well, you're absolutely right. It is never too late. And it's interesting. There's a quote that I remember by Ayn Rand, and I'm going to see if I can get it right. It says something to the effect of, "Don't allow your fire to go out. Spark by irreplaceable spark in the hopeless swamps of the not quite, the not yet, and the not at all. Do not let the hero of your soul perish in lonely frustration for the life you deserved and have never been able to reach. The world you desire can be won. It exists, it's real, it's possible, it's yours. The question is, will you reach out and grab it?"
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think we're coming to a close here, but I want to make sure that we kind of mentioned everything that we wanted to mention. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Just one quick thing. There's an old Haitian proverb that I love, and I think it speaks to this, because as you mentioned before, sort of the underlying thing of the book is about mountains. It's about it. It's talking about purpose-driven achievement as if you're climbing a mountain. And this
Right.
proverb says, "Behind mountains are more mountains. One does not overcome one obstacle only to enter the land of no obstacles. No matter how successful we are, no matter how successful we will be, we're going to find things that stand in our path." And I guess my final word of encouragement for everybody is, learn to be grateful for the mountains, because the process of climbing, the higher you go on the mountain, the better the view, the fresher the air, the less crowded it gets. And for me, initially in my career, I was looking for the easy path in life.
Yeah.
I no longer look for the easy path. I take the challenging way, because it's the mountains, it's the thrill of the mountain climb that gets me out of bed every morning. And I'm just so grateful for that, because it literally adds to and enhances both the purpose and the fulfillment in my life.
Yeah, so true. What also comes up is, for me, is that if you're only ever chasing after the money, it's a lonely path. It's a lonely path. And I think what we are called to do now more than ever is collaborate. And so it's not just about the money anymore. It's about the collaboration with others.
Absolutely. And it's about the wonderful relationships that you build, in the course of doing that.
Yeah.
And the opportunity that you have, even in very, very unknown ways, the opportunities that you have to touch the lives of others. I've had numbers of people come up to me over the years and say, hey, when we were talking the other day, you made this comment. Do you have any idea what that meant to me? And it's like, no, I had no idea that it meant anything to you.
Right.
And so, when we do that, when we just sort of try to generate, a really caring spirit for others, like you're doing in the Gentle Business Revolution, it's bringing that kindness, that love, that collaboration back to the marketplace where, it's not just about doing business. It's about being with those people. It's about loving and caring for and helping others. It's like Zig Ziglar said, you can have anything in life that you want when you help enough other people get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just take your eyes off yourself and say, I'm going to help you find what you want in life. And eventually, one way or another, somehow it's going to come back to me. I don't know how, I don't know when, don't really care about that, but I'm going to give because it's the right thing to do.
That's so true. I want you to share, Gary, with everyone your website and the title of the book again and where people can find it.
Okay. People can check me out at GaryLSmith.com. Just, my name, middle initial L is in Lee, all one word, GaryLSmith.com. And the book will be available through the website. It's also available on Amazon. The ebook is up right now. We've been struggling a little bit with getting the paperback book up, but that should be up sometime this week. And I'm also in the process, I'm about halfway through recording the audio book that will be available on Audible rather, probably by the end of June. But again, the title of the book is Purpose-Driven Achievement, a common sense approach to effectively using purpose, energy, planning, and execution to achieve your most ambitious business and personal dreams. And for those of you who are fans of Sarah, get a copy of it. She was very, very gracious in writing the foreword to the book. And I thank you so much for that, Sarah.
Thank you, Gary. It was a pleasure. My first foreword, I was so honored. That was amazing. Very quickly, Gary, what are you grateful for today? What makes your day special today?
I woke up this morning.
Yes.
And I've got another day to be able to to get out and do stuff and move things forward. And I've already done that. I got up early this morning and was sitting downstairs enjoying my morning coffee and some sunshine and just getting some things done. And I'm grateful for life and I'm excited about what comes next.
Wonderful. It's been a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you, Gary, for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. It's been a joy to be with you, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found some inspiration in this conversation. Please check out the show notes for this episode at sarahsenacroce.com, GBR43. Also visit Gary's website at www.garylsmith.com. And you find all his other social media links in the show notes. And of course, as Gary said, check out his book on Amazon, and it's called Purpose-Driven Achievement. If you enjoyed this conversation and share my worldview, I'd love to hang out with you in the Gentle Business Circle. That's a safe zone to hang out with other imaginal selves and help each other build our business and grow our impact. When you join the Business Circle, you get one live monthly Circle Q&A call with me and other gentle marketers. And don't worry if you can't make it live, you can always submit your questions and get the replay. You also get a monthly newsletter. And as a bonus, you get my Authentic and Fair Pricing mini course for free. And secret bonus episodes every now and then. These calls take place once per month, every second Wednesday of the month, and the next one is coming up on Wednesday, July 8th. There are different levels of support, starting out at $7 per month only. You can find out more at sarahsanacroce.com/circle. And if this is for you, then I'd love to have you there. I hope you'll join me on this journey to a kinder marketing paradigm. Please invite your friends to join us by sharing this episode or the Gentle Business Manifesto with them. Both can be found at thegentlebusinessrevolution.com. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. Speak soon.